Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell here with Glenn Martin. Excited to get into this video. We're going to be talking about our wide receivers here at the Baltimore Ravens and digging into some projections. So we did something very similar to you can check out our last video with the running back group, talking about how that four-headed monster is going to work its way out as far as who's going to get carries, whose carries are going to tick up and tick down. We're going to do a similar thing here with projections with the receivers. And the receivers that we're going to focus on that, there are six of them. We usually carry six are, of course, Marquis Brown, Willie Snead, James Proche, Miles Boykin, Duvernay, and Chris Moore. And so let's start, Glenn. Why don't you lay out a little bit of historical data, if you have it in front of you there, as far as to the wide receiver core, how many targets we got last year, et cetera, and then we'll get into projections.
Yeah, so for the entire wide receiving core, now we understand that certainly the tight ends were a big part of the passing game and the running backs to a certain degree, but we're mainly focusing on just the receiving core. So I'm going to touch on some of the numbers by some of the other positions, but that's just to give a target reference because obviously Hayden Hurst left, and he had 39 targets. So we're going to touch on them, but we're focusing as far as predictions on just the receiving core. Yeah. And just the receiving core last year had a total of 182 targets divided amongst them. Now, there was a total of 440 balls thrown. So only 182 of those went to the six receivers we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, you can see that there's certainly room for that number to increase this year. And when we've heard the coaches talk, a lot of them have referenced the next step for this offense and for Lamar is the development of the passing game. And certainly that's going to involve the receivers. And we expect that the receivers' involvement in this offense will go up and that we may see a decline in maybe the involvement of like the tight end position just for targets and stuff like that. So getting into it, the receiving, Marquis Brown led the receiving core in targets with 71. He ended up with 46 catches for 580 yards and 7 touchdowns with those. Second in receiving targets last year was Willie Snead, getting 46 targets and turning that into 31 catches for 339 yards and 5 touchdowns. Then a significant drop-off. Now, this is another guy who has left. Seth Roberts was third in receiving targets with 35. He turned that into 21 catches for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, as you can see, our third leading target getter in the receiving core is now in Carolina. So, where will those targets be allocated towards? And then Miles Boykin had 22 targets. He had 13 catches for 198 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then much lower for the rest of the guys. So, Jimmy, we have 2 new guys on the team, Duvernay and Proche, and then the rest will be returning. With Brown getting 39%, I believe it was, of the total, what was it?
Yeah, 39% of the total targets.
Yeah. Do you see that number staying around the same, going up, or going down for just Marquis Brown?
Yeah, so I'm saying it's going to stay just about the same. So this is the projections I have them at. I have him projected to get 40.8% of the targets this coming year. As far as the wide receivers go, like you said, Glenn, we need to emphasize, guys, not including the tight ends. This is just the wide receivers. As far as balls going to wide receivers, I have Marquis Brown getting 100 targets, and I think that's a floor for Marquis. Yeah. And then
explain why, though, because you explained why before the show, why you think that's like a floor.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about a couple things. So last year he got 71 targets, and he sat out 2 games, and he had a screw in his foot. So if you take his per game average last year at 4.5, and you're already adding 9 to that, plus the fact that he's healthy. I think we very easily get up to 100 targets, not including the fact that him and Lamar have chemistry, and that I think that he'll expand his range as a player. Everyone talked about him as a deep threat guy, a speed guy. I think he's much more than that as a player. I think we can get him the ball earlier and more often. Not that I hate to make this comparison, but as far as a football comparison, I think that he comps as far as development goes and utilization goes to his cousin. I think he can turn into some semblance of that. I'm not saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer, or put up Hall of Fame type numbers, but I think he can be used in the same fashion as far as volume and versatility of routes.
No, I agree with you. I think it's nice that you pointed that out. The fact of the matter is he only played in 14 games and got 71 targets. So if he just played in a full 16-game season, that's 1.5 or not even 1.5 extra targets a game is what you're asking for. That's not an obscene amount. And I think you're right. I think Marquis was able to show just a portion of his game last year with the screws in his foot. We missed out on – I think every fan remembers the amount of times he would almost just dive down to the ground to avoid contact and him running away from Ramsey during that Rams game. And I think what that shows is that we haven't seen all of what Marquis can be yet, and I think we'll see an uptick in the get him the ball in space type stuff that we didn't see last year. Certainly wide receiver screens and getting some blockers in front of him. There's no reason that Marquis Brown shouldn't lead this team in yak yards, and he didn't last season. Mark Andrews did. He had about 65 more yards in yak yards. I think that number will increase dramatically for Brown, and I think just that little slight uptick in targets and the transformation of his body with the screws being removed from his foot, we're going to see a different type of Marquis Brown this year. So, yeah, I agree. I had 100 targets as a floor for him this season. And now that's assuming health, but there's no reason to assume anything other than that, considering he was able to fight out 14 games with a injured foot last year. So, yeah, 100 targets from me. Who do you have as our second leading target getter in the wide receiver room?
Yeah, now I don't know if we're going to disagree on this or not, but Duvernay is my guy.
Wow.
I'm saying that Duvernay is going to end up with 45 targets, 39 receptions for 500 yards. So as far as, target getter, I think it's going to be Duvernay.
Wow. That's I think he will get his fair share of targets. You mentioned before the show that he's a third-round pick. We can look for recent third-round picks, and we expect them to play a lot. Now, Boykin didn't end up with a ton of targets, but he played in all 16 games. He played a lot of snaps. And then, of course, Mark Andrews at a different position was a third-round pick, and he led our team in targets, yards, touchdowns, you name it. I think that when you're a third-round pick by the Ravens, you're expected to produce right away. I mean, you're expected to contribute to the team, maybe not as a 1 or a 2, but certainly I don't think there's any reason to not expect him to become the third guy at the very least. But to me, I'm going to give my second highest targets to Miles Boykin. He played in a lot of games last year, didn't have a ton of production in those games. People can point to his blocking ability as a reason why he got so many reps, despite the fact that he didn't get a ton of catches. But I think he can make that next step. I'm hoping he can, more so, I guess, than thinking he can, because I fell in love with him in the preseason and training camp, and he kind of disappointed me with only getting 13 catches all year, even though he was able to get 3 touchdowns out of those limited catches. But I look for him to make a big step up. He got 22 targets this past season. I look at that to double this year. I think he's going to get 45 targets. And look, if he can turn into the guy we were hoping, you can't just imagine if we had more than just Andrews as that high point the ball, red zone threat guy, that possession guy. If we could turn Boykin, he already has the size. He's got the straight line speed. If he can it's hard to teach a guy to high point a ball the way Mark Andrews does, but if he's shown that he has done it on occasion, if he can show more consistency on high pointing that ball, become more of that red zone threat that everybody was hoping while maintaining that vertical straight line speed that he has, I think there's no reason why he can't have 45 targets and somewhere end up with the yard, maybe 35 receptions and get that touchdown up to about 5 touchdowns.
Because I have Boykin as I have him and Willie Snead actually tied for our third as far as getting targets. But the reason I gave Duvernay the edge is very different players. I think as far as short yardage situations, and dominating the inside, the middle of the field. I think Duvernay is the type of guy that we didn't have last year. We had Mark Andrews, big body guy, lined up against linebackers a lot or safeties and torched them. But I think for different reasons, when you line up Duvernay on the inside, he's going to have a similar effect because of his speed in a short area. So people talk about speed, but it's not just his speed. I think he's a quick guy. Inside of a box, I think he can move and get open. And so I think he'll get the ball often, and because of that. So early developing plays, it's not going to take a long time for him to get open, and it's not going to take a long time for that play to develop. So that's the reason why I say he's going to get plenty of targets. But I can see the Boykin thing as well. I hope, just like you said, that he develops into something more. I also have him projecting for 5 touchdowns, so I thought it's interesting we have the same number, because I think we will see a progression in the red zone. But I don't know if he's ever going to be a high volume guy, because to be that size and have top end speed, to be a high volume guy, you've also got to be like the good ones that are his size are really good route runners. Mm-hmm. I hope he gets there, right? But if you're not a really good route runner and you're a big guy with top end speed, you're going to get the ball in specific scenarios where the volume might not be there. So that was my only.
Well, you got to think my predictions aren't necessarily a volume receiver. My predictions are, you got to understand, my predictions are 40 grabs, not 100.
Volume in the Ravens system.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So yeah, to me, my third guy is a guy you just mentioned, is Duvernay, and the reason is I think, people may forget the importance of what Willie Snead brings to this offense, but I think if you listen to the coaches, he's one of the most physical receivers in the league, so they love him for his blocking, but they also love him for those big-time third down catches, or those, you mentioned that throw that Lamar threw across the field, horrible decision, but Snead bailed him out by going up and making that catch. I think they look at Duvernay as a better version of Snead. So he's very physical, known for his physicality, known for his blocking in college, which is something that if you're not going to be a good blocker, you're not going to be a player for the Ravens on offense. So to me, he's a lot like Snead, but he has that speed element that Snead doesn't bring. So I think that Duvernay gets some of those targets that Snead got last year and gets some of the snaps that Snead got last year. So I got his targets at about 40 this year. I think he'll get to 500 yards, and I think he'll have about 3 touchdowns. Look, there's no doubt that all rookies this year, are behind the 8 ball. It's just what it is. So I don't think we can expect Duvernay to come in and light up the scoreboard and become like what Marquis Brown did last year in the limited time he had. But I think there's no reason to expect he can't learn from Willie Snead, take some of the snaps and some of the targets from Willie Snead, because do we really expect Snead to be in our long-term plans going forward? I don't even know if he'll be here next year, but certainly I don't think he'll be here in 2 years. I think that's why they brought in guys like Duvernay and Proche to replace. It's just how it is. It's just the fact of the reality of the NFL is you are here until you're being replaced, and I think that he is the first sign of that, replacing Willie Snead. And so Snead to me comes in 4th on my list of targets, and Duvernay is 3rd.
All right. Yeah. So I have Snead, like I mentioned, tied with Boykin. And I see him taking the brunt of the hit of the new guys. So, in yards and in total receptions. But I will say this I can guarantee you, Willie Snead will make some big plays on 3rd down when we need him to. Potentially 4th down.
No doubt.
He'll make some big plays, and he will block his butt off. I love Willie Snead. He's just a hard worker. I really think it's his work ethic, the reason that he's still in the NFL. Like, not that every player in the NFL is naturally gifted, but some guys have the natural ability to where they don't need to work crazy hard. I think he just works his butt off. He
works his butt, and he's highly competitive too, which is awesome. So you got to have that. And look, there's 35 targets that went to Seth Roberts that have to go somewhere. And yeah, I think that's why Snead still makes himself relevant, even though he's ceding some targets to Duvernay.
Yeah, absolutely. You sounded like you were a New Yorker there for a second. Seth Roberts.
Did I? I love that accent, though, so I'm not mad about that.
That's awesome. But so my total targets, I have going up from 182 to 245 to the wide receivers. I think that there will be, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. Based on where we've been drafting and the departure or the trade of Hayden Hurst, there will be a natural progression away from depending on Mark Andrews. Not that want to. Like, Mark is great, but I don't think it's the best thing for our offense. Obviously, we want to be as well balanced as possible. So that way, if Mark gets hurt, hopefully that never happens. Or if the Patriots, for example, take away your option 1 and 2, okay, fine. We got 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
So we want to be well balanced. We want to be well rounded. They can take away our running game and Mark Andrews. We want to be more than that, right?
Yeah.
And so moving away from that, I think will happen. So with that being said, I have 245 total targets, 2,385 total yards, and 21 touchdowns for the wide receivers in this coming year.
Wow. Yeah, I have very similar numbers. I have 240 targets total for the wide receivers, and then 2,560 yards total from them, which would be an uptick. But we mentioned in our Lamar prediction video that we expect his yards to go up. He I believe it was like 31.45. I actually have him in front of me. 31.27.
Yeah,
was his total last year. I think we both predicted that to be upwards of 38. I think you said 4,000 yards. So with our predicted uptick, there's no reason why we can't see a huge improvement from the wide receivers. And I agree with you. I think that they were too reliant last year on Mark Andrews. I love Mark Andrews. I think he's a great player. But when he got hurt towards the end of the season and wasn't able to, he had that ankle issue and he wasn't able to run like he was before, I think it showed on the field. I think we can't have our tight end lead our team in targets, receiving, receptions, yards, touchdowns, yak, first downs, big plays. He had 16 plays over 20. That's double anybody else. He literally led our team in almost every single receiving category. I don't know if you want that to happen again this year. I think you want Marquis to take some of those leads. And I think you want to have at least – look, he's great with the ball in his hands. That's part of what makes Andrews great is he's a 265-pound guy that can run. But to me, I still don't think he should be your leader in yak. I think you should be wanting to get Marquis in space and letting him use his natural make-you-miss ability and all that stuff. But so, yeah, I think that we need to see the receivers get more involved in the offense. And – look, Hurst is out the door. So even if Charles Scarf and Breland make the team, I don't know if you're going to get first-round talent out of any of those guys, which is what we had out of Hurst. So I don't think there's any reason why the targets to the overall tight end group shouldn't go down and that those targets should then be given over to wide receivers. And overall targets should increase, in my opinion, because I think Lamar's going to throw the ball a little bit more this year. Those are my – now, what about your Chris Moore predictions? Because I got to give you mine.
Okay, so I have 5 targets, receptions, but might be career high. I don't know. I'd have to look this up. 50 yards.
Oh, that is career high. I think so. I got to agree with you. I think that Chris Moore makes this team for his contributions on special teams and the fact that he already knows this offense and so on and so forth. But, yeah, I think he brings up the rear. I got 5 targets. For him, 0 touchdowns, and a total of 25 yards. So you had him going a little higher.
Of his 3 receptions, 1 of them from Sam Cook. His longest reception will be from Sam Cook.
I think that's a good prediction. Honestly, yeah, I got to agree with you. But I think Proche ends up with 15 targets. I think he does get around 200 yards, which isn't bad, and I think he'll get in the end zone once. And that about rounds off my receiving core. Yeah,
just to give my take on Proche. I have him at 25 targets, 18 receptions, 175 yards, and 1 touchdown. So very similar to your numbers. Yeah. I think he will be a factor, and a lot of people are excited about Proche. Absolutely. We saw that in our Proche video. Got some awesome feedback from you guys. But I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and like you said, the rookies are behind the 8 ball this year. So,
and his contributions may be like Chris Moore on special teams, which, we saw Proche's name get floated around as a punt returner. Possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So let us know what you guys think. I'm going to present a challenge here. If any of you guys find that there's ever been a time in history when a tight end is led in all 7 of the categories that Glenn named, we would like to know who that was, what year that was, what team that was. So,
I'll tell you what, I might have a guess at it. I'd like to see what Kittle did.
Yeah.
Last year.
That's true. And so Kittle, Kelsey, you got your Gronkowskis and things like that. But I'd like to know because that is hell of a lot of categories to be leading in as a tight end. So let us know. Also, make sure to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Give us your thoughts on our projections as far as the wide receiver room, and we'll be sure to get back to you. But hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.